All right, today we're going to tackle a really wild idea. An idea that might just change how you see, well, everything. What if I told you the space between you and me, between the Earth and the Sun, isn't empty? What if it's not just a passive stage for reality, but an active piece of the show itself? Let's dive in. Okay, let's get right to the heart of it. This one slide really captures the massive shift we're talking about. On the left, you've got the idea we've all grown up with. Matter exists in space. Simple enough. But on the right, the unified postmodern theory, or UPT, flips that whole thing on its head. It declares matter is space. Now, this isn't just playing with words. This is a proposal for a totally different operating system for reality. To really get why the UPT model is such a game changer, we first have to appreciate the powerful ideas it's trying to replace. I mean, our entire intuition about the world has been built on the idea of space as a big, empty backdrop. For centuries, we had this picture, thanks mostly to Isaac Newton. Space was like this huge, silent, and completely neutral container. You could think of it as an infinite, empty box that just held everything. The stars, the planets, you and me. Space didn't do anything. Things just happened inside of it.
Then, of course, Einstein came along and completely changed the game. Space wasn't a rigid stage anymore. It was this dynamic fabric, space-time, that could actually bend and warp around massive objects. It gave us a whole new way to think about gravity. But, and this is a big but, even with this incredible leap forward, the core idea was kind of the same. Space was still the background, and matter was still the actor on that background.
So this is where the unified postmodern theory developed by Mr. Thanh Hảo takes a hard left turn. It doesn't just try to tweak the old models. Instead, it starts by asking a question that is so basic, so fundamental, that we've kind of just ignored it. I mean, really think about that for a second. Who owns space? Or what owns space? It sounds almost philosophical, right? But according to UPT, this is the question, the key that unlocks an entirely new description of reality. The focus shifts from what is space to whose is it?
And here's the kicker. UPT claims that by assuming space is ownerless, that it's just this neutral public commons, we've forced ourselves to invent extra concepts to make sense of things. You know, ideas like forces and fields that somehow act across a total void. UPT says that's a detour, because the void was never empty or ownerless in the first place.
So, if space isn't ownerless, then it must be owned. And that brings us to UPT's core concept, its fundamental building block for everything that exists.
Now, pay close attention to that phrase, complete unity. A Foundon isn't a particle just sitting in a little piece of space. No. The particle and its own personal space, its intrinsic vacuum, are the exact same thing. They are totally inseparable. The Foundon is its space, and its space is the Foundon. It's like a coin. You can't have a heads without a tails. They're two sides of one reality.
And this leads to two brand new rules for reality. Now, UPT doesn't present these as theories we need to go out and test, but it's just descriptions of what reality is. First, wherever there's space, that space is a vacuum. Okay. But the second one, that's the mind bender. Every single point, everywhere in the universe, has an owner. It belongs to the inside of one and only one Foundon. There's no such thing as an unclaimed neutral void.
Right. So if that's true, it completely changes how we have to think about what we call emptiness. If every single point is owned, then what in the world is the gap between two things?
Let's just take a simple example. We know there's space between two atoms in a molecule, right? Or between planets. So in this new model, what is that space really?
The difference here is just night and day. On the left, the old view says it's an empty, ownerless void. It's just distance. Nothing. But the UPT view on the right? Whoa. That gap is an active, owned territory. It is the intrinsic vacuum of another, usually much larger Foundon, what's called a host Foundon, that is actively governing that entire area.
So get this. Every gap you see, the space between you and the wall, the vastness between stars, it's not nothing. It's the active, operating territory of a specific Foundon. It's a physical thing. From this perspective, true emptiness is just an illusion.
So if everything, and I mean everything, is just Foundons and the spaces they are, then what does a universe built like that actually look like?
You have to just throw out the idea of one big box that holds everything. Instead, picture this dynamic, endless foam made of countless individual spaces, all interwoven, all pressed right up against each other.
They aren't sitting in a universe. Together, they are the universe. And since they all touch, there's no need for action at a distance. All interactions are direct.
So let's just quickly recap what this all means. First, space is no longer a background. The stage itself just vanished from the play. The actors are the stage.
Second, it's no longer neutral. No part of reality is just passively sitting there. Every single point has a physical owner, a Foundon, and an active role to play in the grand scheme of things.
And finally, it all comes back to this foundational shift. It's no longer ownerless. Every single position in the universe belongs to one and only one Foundon. The universe is described as being completely, totally, and utterly owned.
And this is where it gets really profound and incredibly personal. According to UPT, you are not a body of matter that happens to be living in space. You are a configuration of spaces, a massive collection of these Foundons, and you exist by intruding into the space of a bigger host Foundon, like the Earth. We are, quite literally, spaces within a space. So we've gone from a universe with a static background to a dynamic one, and now to a universe with no background at all. UPT describes a reality that's a fully interwoven fabric, where we aren't just observers in it, we're a literal part of the material. It leaves us with a pretty massive question to think about, doesn't it? If we are not in the universe, but are a part of its very fabric, what does that truly mean?